for being here. I am Jamila Bey, and I'm the new Director of Communications for the Secular Student Alliance. I'm also a member of this here National Press Club, and as friends like to remind folks, this is my natural habitat, so thank you for joining me today. Our event is a wonderful one. Secular Coalition of America, Secular Coalition for America is holding its annual lobby days tomorrow, kicks it off, and so today we are here to talk about the issues that we secular Americans face. And I have a wonderful panel of folks who will be sharing their perspective. We do know that secular Americans are a sizable minority today in the United States, and by a number of factors, those numbers do appear to be growing. Recent studies have shown that Americans, however, even those who don't consider themselves to be secular, believe that there is far too much religious entanglement in American politics. When we look to recent Supreme Court rulings and the lack of enforcement and protection from our elected representatives to maintain or even acknowledge the wall that stands between church and state, we realize that for the numbers we have in this country, we don't, as secular Americans, have adequate representation. Because of that, the culture is such that people, sometimes those who are elected to represent us, feel that it's okay to engage in discriminatory practices and behavior. So, we are here to talk about how we are raising our voices and declaring our American citizenship and asserting our rights to be fully protected citizens and fully engaged citizens as well. On the panel, I'm just going to go down and then introduce everyone as he or she comes up to speak. We have David Silverman, who is the president of American Atheists. Sarah Morehead is the executive director of Recovering from Religion. Here to my immediate right is August Brunsman, who is the executive director of the Secular Student Alliance. Next to him is Neil Polzin, who is here to do a really, really great thing, but he's also a board member of Camp Quest, which is a camp for children who don't adhere to any traditional religious beliefs. And on the far end is Kelly Damerow of the Secular Coalition for America. So, to kick us off with how we are coming together and the fight that we have in front of us to take our rightful place as citizens and the need for protection that we have. I want to bring up David Silverman of American Atheists. He is very well known for those billboards he puts up every year. So come on over, David. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Jamila. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I would like to talk today about the utterly insufficient amount of support we are seeing coming out of Congress. Although many are vocal supporters of the separation of church and state, and we appreciate that certainly, atheism and atheists are words only spoken in derision on Capitol Hill. The religious right complains about atheists, but nobody defends us. Throughout this country, for example, bullying is a problem in our schools. So thankfully there is activity to prevent such stupid behavior. But religious people want exemptions for bullying for religious reasons. Now, while people are discussing the need for religious exemptions, notice nobody is defending the victims of religious bullying, the atheists, by name. Nobody is standing up for the millions of atheist children who are exposed to religious bigotry every day in the public school system. What does this say about Congress? These past several years have included many tragedies in America, most of which were followed by memorial services for the communities to heal. Some large, some small, some televised, some not. Some were attended by the president. All included multiple religious speakers. None included an atheist. Even when the local atheists had a celebrant ready to ask to speak, they were turned away. What does that say about our community? Throughout recent history, Muslim terrorists have attacked this country and her people. The result has been a natural American aversion to Muslim people, and Congress and local governments have rightfully gone out of their way to normalize Islam to squelch bigotry against Muslim people. Yet poll after poll shows atheists as the most hated group of people in America, and yet this group, which is statistically many times larger than the Muslim populations, is not only not defended in Congress in any way, but often openly derided in a manner that clearly brags of bigotry. What does that say about our country? We need to change that part of our country and our community and our Congress. We're here today, ladies and gentlemen, to continue to fix our problems by engaging with politicians to ask for their help and their support. Indeed, we are here to demand it. We deserve it, and yeah, we need it. And as the fastest growing religious category in all of the 50 states, they need us, or will soon. We are here to tell them that the silence about bullying atheist students implies endorsement of bullying atheist students. We are here to say that in times of tragedy, we all mourn. But when atheists are specifically excluded from participation in services that include everyone else, it tells us we don't count, and it tells the attendees and the viewers that we don't care when we do. We are here to say that bigotry against atheists is rampant, unjustified, and as ignorant and primitive as anti-Semitism or racism. We are here to say that these examples of our implied second-class citizenry are but a few of many. Most of our country's representatives are wonderful, busy people who simply need to be made aware of the facts about atheists in this country. And this is why we are here. Atheists going to Congress achieve progress in his action alone toward the goal of normalizing atheism. And American Atheists is proud to be a part of this important weekend. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to call up to the podium here Kelly Damerow. She is the Director of Federal and State Affairs with the Secular Coalition for America. And Kelly, I hope, is going to explain that, you know, we are very happy that we're starting to get some positive recognition, and some elected officials are welcoming to us, but those numbers are still far too small, and there are a bunch of people who I bet we aren't even allowed to mention, but Kelly, please come on over. Thank you so much.
Thank you everyone for being here today. The Secular Coalition represents non-theists to our members of Congress as well as elected officials across the country. And we've been around for 10 years, and we are improving, but there is still a long way to go when it comes to non-theists getting respect and being visible on Capitol Hill. Just a few years ago, we would get meetings with congressional offices, but only if we agreed not to publicize them, talk about them, keep them secret and private. But just 2013 alone, we had over 100 meetings with different congressional offices in both chambers and on both sides of the aisle. When I go to a meeting, there's typically one of four types of reactions I will get. There's a small handful of offices that will openly and proudly work with us. There's a small handful of offices that will openly and proudly not work with us. And luckily the first group is growing. The voices and noise of the second group is growing, but it's not my experience that they're growing in number. The third type are offices that do their absolute best to ignore us. Repeated emails and phone calls go unanswered. And it would be easy to lump blame on those congressional offices. But a Pew poll that recently came out showed that 53% of Americans would not vote for a presidential candidate who did not believe in God. And I can't help but think when they choose not to respond to those emails and those phone calls, it's that number that's going through their head. The growing fourth category of offices are those that do have meetings with us, that are happy to talk about issues of concern to the secular community, and we bring new issues across their desk, educate them, bring them new information and resources to help them make decisions on legislation and regulations. We have become a very important resource to them. However, they still politely ask us to not publicly share how much we are working with them. Our electorate is growing. They can no longer afford to ignore us, but they aren't quite at the point they feel they can publicly acknowledge the work we do. I don't want to name any particular offices, but one staff member did tell me, and it's something I hear often, you're right, you're absolutely right, I agree with you 100%, and this is very important. However, our weekly meeting with the Catholic bishops is tomorrow, and there's nothing we can do about it. There's nothing we can do to help. There's nothing we can do to bring this issue to more attention, or to even make the right decision. It puts the staff members of the elected officials in some difficult positions to have to make the political choice and not the right one, simply because they can't take the step of affiliating with non-theists. In conclusion, I just want to say that this has been last year's been one of the best years that we've had, and to cite our biggest win, for the first time ever, a presidential proclamation used the words atheist and agnostic. Never before in over 200-year history of being a nation has that happened. And it happened this year on International Religious Freedom Day. So we're seeing progress. We really need to change the hearts and minds of the electorate, and we really need the secular Americans who are voting to speak up louder and make sure that their voices are heard. Thank you.
I also want to take the opportunity to point out, I mean, there are 5 sitting members of Congress who are going to be taking part in secular coalition events this week. So that's a win. That's clearly a result of the work that you good folks are doing up on 14th and K. There we go. Sarah Morehead, who's the executive director of the Recovering from Religion Foundation, is based out of Omaha, Nebraska, and she is an amazing person. Because of her, I was able to interview Ernie Chambers, who's the Nebraska state senator who sued God. That's what his claim to fame is. But he's also a wonderful individual who is open in his own non-theism, but he's won. He was elected repeatedly. The state constitution was amended such that term limits were imposed so that Ernie Chambers couldn't be elected anymore. And then when everybody else realized, oh wait, that affects us too, the constitution got changed again. So that's some political happening up in Ms. Morehead's neck of the woods. And I'm really excited to have her here because her organization talks to the people who are saying, I want to come out, I want to participate, here is why I don't. So Sarah, thank you so much. Please take it away.
Thank you very much everyone for being here. Recovering from Religion is a member organization of the Secular Coalition. We were founded in 2009 by Dr. Damerow, author of The God Virus and current director of Recovering from Religion's Secular Therapist Project. We provide practical support to anyone considering a life free from the confines of faith. Our support networks include local support groups that meet monthly across the United States, Canada, the UK, and Australia. We also offer private online support groups for people who cannot safely attend an event in person. The Secular Therapist Project is another one of our resources. It is a program designed to match interested clients anonymously with therapists who have committed to using only secular methodology in their therapeutic practice. We also have the Hotline Project, which will be a toll-free number for the United States and Canada, featuring a live integrated chat function and the ability for people to call 24 hours a day to talk to a trained agent and get the support and the resources that they're looking for as they're considering a life free from faith. From lifelong non-believers struggling with the encroachment of religious pressure in their community, to questioning believers reconsidering the role of religion in their life, Recovering from Religion helps them make connections and find their place in the warm and welcoming secular community. Many non-believers face discrimination for their decision to reject religious beliefs and have to stay closeted or face the very real threat of everything from losing their job or their family and sometimes even their lives. This constant need to hide who they really are can create emotional stress, even depression, and sometimes suicidal thoughts, because they feel unwelcome in their own community. Recovering from religion has countless stories from closeted non-believers, but there is one that sticks out the most in my mind. For confidentiality reasons within our organization, I can't disclose their name or share identifying details, and I hope that reason enough alone is reason enough alone for people to recognize the seriousness of concerns that people face publicly voicing their disbelief. This was a phone call made several months ago in the early hours of the morning, as many of them are. It was made to our office line, and the message was so long they had to call back to finish. Her voice was a whisper. She said she had just finished reading Dr. Ray's book. She suddenly realized after searching scripture for many, many years, she could no longer believe the stories of her own childhood. She went on in a shaking voice to say that she had searched the internet and found our organization. She was calling us in hopes that we would know what to tell her to do. She was a Sunday school teacher at a non-denominational church in a major city in our country. Her husband was a deacon. She knew from previous conversations and many times sitting in the pews of her congregation that telling him she no longer shared his religious belief would be the immediate end to their 20-year marriage and possibly even the loss of her children. She cried into the voicemail as she told us how alone she felt and how scared she was to lose her husband and the life they had built. That she knew her friends would never speak to her again, and she begged us to help her figure out what to do from there. This is just one of countless stories throughout all of our support networks that speak to the very real risks experienced by coming out. Recovering from Religion is here as a voice for those closeted individuals, both to provide practical support for their journey and to educate the public as to why this discrimination needs to be addressed head on. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sarah. So the next individual I'm bringing up is August Brunsman, who is the executive director of the Secular Student Alliance. And I have to admit, now that I'm the director of communications there, I've had to reconsider how I talk about younger people. They are young people, they're not kids. They are students, they're not kids, they're not kids. To look out on our culture, it's easy to become sad and say, oh, I've been watching a lot of these reality shows and the hope for the future is lost, but that is not at all the reality as I've actually started to experience it, and August will tell you more. Our young folks are engaged, they are active, they are taking a stand, they are becoming politically engaged in this country, and they are doing their part to make it a better place. And a lot of them are saying that they are not religious. Some of them are using the words atheist, agnostic, freethinker, and all of the other assorted terms. They are coming to the table, sharing all that they have, and for that, some of them are facing great obstacles. So, August, please let's talk a little bit more about what you do and what the students, the young people, the future of this country are doing to help embrace secularism all around.
My pleasure, Jamila. Thank you so much for that warm introduction, and thanks everybody for coming out here on this warm afternoon. So the Secular Student Alliance seeks to spread secular values and normalize secular identity by empowering secular students. A lot of what we have done for the past decade and beyond has been focusing on hundreds of communities at high schools and at college campuses. And those groups focus on community, education, advocacy, and service. They have all kinds of events, and if you let me have the mic for half an hour or an hour, I could tell you all about them. There's really all sorts of very exciting things going on. But I want to share one particular story, just give you kind of a flavor for how our groups sometimes influence people's lives and how we hope to kind of build on what we've been doing in the past. So, I happen to, in addition to having the role of Executive Director of the Secular Student Alliance, I also have volunteered at Camp Quest, a camp for kids from non-religious families. We don't label the kids as to their worldviews. I've been volunteering there since 1999, and last summer I was volunteering there with a good friend of mine, Todd Stiefel, who's the head of the Stiefel Free Thought Foundation. and we were watching Sarah Henry, who is a counselor in training, the group that she had started at Floyd Central High School, which is in southern Indiana, in Georgetown, Indiana. And she talked about how, the group had kind of run into the standard set of problems that, well, I know that they're standard because this is what I do for a living, but maybe all of you don't know that they're standard, in terms of the administration being very lukewarm about the group getting started in the first place, and sort of always dragging their feet whenever they needed a request. They had to completely scrap printing t-shirts for their year because the administration had taken so long to get back to them. And sort of all kinds of normal things like that. But the story that really caught our attention was a story about her co-founder. So there was another young lady that she had started the group with. And unlike Sarah, who was lucky enough to have parents who were also non-religious and totally embracing of what she was doing at school, and in fact really quite proud of her for taking a stand for her identity and for her choice to think for herself and for her choice to have a voice, even if it was not always a popular voice. But her co-founder, her parents did not even know that she was not religious. And she wanted to tell her parents because she was very proud of what she was doing and very excited about what the group was doing. And eventually she screwed her courage to the sticking point and did it. And it went fine. And one thing that caught our attention was that she used this brochure, which is a brochure the Secular Student Alliance makes. It's just our What is an Atheist brochure. We hand out, the student activists we give these to, hand them out to thousands and thousands of people all over the country. But having that sort of outside, legitimate tool to talk about, well, this is what I think, and here are some answers to sort of general questions about, what non-believers think happens after you die, what happened, where do you get your morals and values from? She was able to talk about those things, but having kind of something to lean on, some materials to lean on was really valuable for her. And really made a difference in her, making the choice to open up. And be open about who she was as a secular American to her parents. And that got Todd and I thinking that, hey, we have hundreds of groups around the country, but there are something like 24,000 high schools, and that's just the high schools. We're not everywhere we need to be. And we really want to be able to go out on the internet and reach out to everybody. So that got us thinking about how to accelerate that process. And now we're partnering with the Richard Dawkins Foundation for Reason and Science and the Secular Coalition for America and Camp Quest and the Stiefel Free Thought Foundation and oodles of other organizations to launch a project called Openly Secular, which we hope will help millions of Americans come out or open up to their fellow Americans as non-religious and as proud seculars. We really feel that it's important for seculars of all age, but especially students, because that's where we're focused, to have a voice and to have a seat at the table. And we can't do that unless we're open about who we are. So that's what we're helping to make happen, and we're very proud to be doing it, and we're very proud to be here today, and thank you so much for coming out.
So, a wise man once said, "I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way." George Benson of Pittsburgh, woohoo, go Steelers. That song is one that gets played every year at a particular event I go to where we talk about young people here in Washington, D.C. who have done something courageous and brave in the neighborhood I live in. And I want to bring up the Mars family here. Joni Lynn Mars is the mom of these wonderful children, Oklahoma residents here, and you'll come on over this way. And Joni is going to talk about what it means to live authentically and to have a family that's non-religious and a place where they are not accepted for being who they are. As she's telling her story, I want you to think about what would happen if you inserted a different demographic. If what happened to her child happened because a young child was Jewish or black or disabled. Let's just look at the way situations are handled when a family who is atheist faces them versus when a family who subscribes to a different religious tradition has such things put upon them. So thank you so much. They got off the plane yesterday, and I want to thank you all for being here. So this is Zoe, Callie, and Mom Joni. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Joni Mars. These are my daughters, Callie, she's 6 years old, and Zoe, who's 11. As Jamila said, we live in Oklahoma City. It's a little difficult there to raise your children to be free thinkers. We're constantly discouraged from being open about our free thinking and the way we raise our children. My mother-in-law actually said before we came out here that we were making a mistake and we were hurting our children by being here, because when we get home we could be threatened, attacked, or worse. These are things that you usually have to worry about in Middle Eastern countries or third world countries. They're not things that families should have to worry about here in America. The reason that we're here is my 6-year-old daughter, Callie, came home from school one day and she was just in tears. She was hyperventilating, extremely upset. And I said to her, "What happened?" And she said, this little boy, who I won't name, beat me up and on the bus. And I said, "Well, what happened that you guys got to that point?" And she said, "He asked me if I believed in God, and when I said no, he started kicking me and punching me and pinching me." She was covered in bruises from head to toe. Her leg had a bruise about this big on it. Bruises all up and down her arms, scabs from where he had pinched her. I went over and addressed it with the child's parents, and they said, "Well, we'll handle it." Well, 3 days later, on the playground in our community, he beat her up again. And it's getting to the point now where we're not even sure that we can stay living in Oklahoma because it's affecting our children's safety so much. My husband was a combat veteran in Iraq. He served 2 tours. He saw his friends die. He lost a lot himself, and he came home to see that these are the freedoms that he watched his friends die for. Our children don't get the same consideration that other families do. So that's our story.
Do you mind if I ask Callie a couple questions?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I don't know how you
Here's how we're going to do this. Okay. So, well, yeah, I'm going to pull this chair over here, and Callie, I'm going to help you up here. Okay.
Bravo.
So, was this something that? Why did you tell this boy that you didn't believe in God? Did you start talking to him about it, or did he ask you?
He asked me.
And so you told him, "No, I don't believe in God."
Yes.
And because of that, he hurt you. He didn't want to be your friend.
Yes.
Did anybody else? Was there anybody else on the bus?
Mhm.
Did anybody else try and stop him from hurting you? Did anybody protect you?
Mhm.
Did anybody see what was going on?
No.
Oh.
All they did is tell him to pull my hair and go and pinch me. That's all they said.
So other people were telling him to keep doing those things?
Mhm.
Yeah. And your mom and your sister and your dad, of course, let you know that you are an awesome person and nobody has the right to hurt you, right?
Mhm.
Can I have a hug? Aww. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm going to help you back down. Okay. Thank you so much. So yeah. No. I want to ask you to talk just a little bit more about what your husband is dealing with, because on the phone, you shared with me that he's struggling with some things, and I mean the community you're living in has people who are saying specific things to him, and I want you to refresh me and tell the audience what kinds of things are being brought literally to your doorstep.
Okay. Well, as I had said before, my husband served 2 tours in Iraq in the Marine Corps. He served 10 years proudly. Our walls are covered with plaques of his honorable service. And it was actually, my husband was raised in Oklahoma, and so he was raised as a Southern Baptist, God-fearing Christian. And when he served his tours in Iraq, he had, one of his good friends was shot in the head and killed right next to him, and there was nothing that he could do about it. And he said that that was kind of his moment where he realized that God didn't come and God didn't save him, and that was kind of the moment he lost his faith. And so he saw a lot while he was over there. He did a lot, and a lot of things that he's supposed to be treated as a hero for. But he comes home, and we've had people tell us that he must not have done anything, or he must not have served honorably, because if he had seen any sort of actual combat, he would have found Jesus, is the expression we hear all the time. And my husband, actually, he suffers with PTSD, and so he keeps a lot of things to himself. He really is not as open with his secularism as I am, because of these comments. I mean, it's insulting to him and to his service, so.
So you folks are going to stay here for a minute. One of the coalition partners, in fact, does do work with our armed forces and our families there. So this is an issue that we see and we face, and this is the face of it. This is why we need our representatives to understand that nobody is making things up. Nobody is saying we want special rights. We're American citizens who cannot live freely in our country. And that's what we need to fight for, and that's what we need protection for. Neil Polzin is a Camp Quest counselor. He's an Eagle Scout. We're going to get into your own story in a moment, but we are awarding, Camp Quest rather, is awarding its first ever special campership. And I'm going to have Neil come on over and talk to the Mars daughters for a moment.
Well, so first, I don't think they got a round of applause. So.
Yeah.
And obviously, hearing that story, I think everyone, at least seeing the audience here, it takes a lot of courage. A lot of courage. I know myself, I didn't find until later in life, not only not to believe, but to be proud to say that regardless of the consequences. Because it's always easy to have a coworker or someone ask you and you kind of shuffle off that conversation. It's easier not to get into, it's easier not to disrupt the workplace, it's easier not to go down that route. So it really does take courage. And so Camp Quest is proud to present both Callie and Zoe here, our first ever Courage Campership Awards. So let me go ahead and hand these to you guys. So this one's for you. And so what this is for is, a campership to come to any one of our camps. We have one, of course, in Oklahoma, with a lot of people local to you that go through some of those same things, or you would be a role model in any of our camps, depending which one you wanted to come to. So again, thank you guys so much for your courage.
We're really grateful for this because they feel like outcast a lot, so it'll be good for them. Thank you.
Great. Thank you guys. And we hope that your courage inspires us in the year's future here to find many more recipients for this. And really, you would be a role model to any of our camps, because they're filled with kids that go through a lot of these same things, that come from households, maybe they don't know what they believe, but they can't have that discussion. As mentioned, I am myself an Eagle Scout. I went through the whole scouting program. I worked at the National Scout Jamboree in 2001. I was employed by the Boy Scouts in different various positions, from a lifeguard to staff at different camps to even a shop clerk throughout the years at their own Boy Scout shops where they sell all the camping and uniforms and things like that. I did that for employment for nearly 10 years from them. And it was one of those things that actually found my non-belief and found my atheism through the Scouts, and that sounds odd. Because I went to the Scouts not really having a strong religious background, but they have all these religious awards and things you can go through and learn about these different religions. As I made my way through those, they all had a theme to me, and that was no. And so around 14, 15, I kind of tossed all of that out. Now that still took me another 10 years working for them in order to really say, hey, you guys have this policy. I'm an atheist. I'm having people, being an aquatics director at this point at a camp, not wanting to even take orders from me. This seems wrong, you know, can you do something about it? And they said, yeah, we'll do something about it. You're out. And that everyone's lost a job before that, you know, obviously happens, nothing that anyone wants. It was an actual job, it wasn't just a volunteer organization. It was my only income while I was actually back in school at that time. And it's an odd thing to try and tell someone the community that you have after 10 years of working somewhere, after, you know, growing up having this extracurricular activity, and that really being the focus on everything. And you'd be surprised, and one of the things I'm here to tell you is these things are actually out there. You know, a lot of times you think, oh, it might cause controversy at work, but what's really going to happen? You know, even coming down to federal dollars and tax dollars, my home troop in Covina, California, gets a free rent on what they call a scout shack in a public park with free electricity, free storage, free meeting space. To this day, when I staffed the National Jamboree, they rented that space at Fort AP Hill, Virginia, just relatively down the street from here, for $1 a year. These are actual monies coming from and being funded by the government. Now, of course, the courts have said, well, they're a public entity, that's why we can give them money, but they're a private entity, that's why they can discriminate. So we're at a bit of a standstill there, because that obviously doesn't sound right to many people, but there are things you actually can do. One thing that I found where I can still give back to this camping community and give that experience of summer camp that was so important to me is Camp Quest. Camp Quest has been around a number of years now. I've been involved in Camp Quest West for nearly a decade. I'm their camp director for the Northern California session. And it really is a special place. My sister and my nephew come from a more believing, but loosely believing household. I make sure he's been coming the last couple of years. Just because they have their doubts, especially my nephew, doesn't have anyone he can talk about these things with. We don't label these kids. We give them different things to do. We show them different people that may be going through these same experiences or having these same doubts, and give them a sense of community. And you would be surprised. They're just there 1 week a year, and yet these kids have stronger friends at camp than they do at school, that they can connect with, that they bond with, that they come back year after year just to see their friends. And they get a strong dose of camp while they're at it, and hopefully learn something at the same time. So camp is an extremely important thing. It's not something that's reserved for the religious. It's not something that we should be subsidizing to discriminate against. But it is something that I'm proud to say that I'm involved with Camp Quest. That's out there every day, hosting now multiple camps across the country from Oklahoma. We have 2 in California. Of course, Camp Quest Michigan, Camp Quest Ohio, Camp Quest Northwest. There's a lot of them out there. campquest.org. Take a look at all those camps. Send your kid to them, and if you don't have a kid that's the right age, send them some money, because they'll find a kid who needs a couple bucks to be able to make it happen. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. So before we turn this to moderated conversation, I wonder if there are questions from the floor. Gentleman in the back.
Hey, I have one question. So since you are going to be meeting representatives and senators on the Hill tomorrow, and you have these meetings, I was wondering if you could give us a sense of what your particular asks are in terms of policy recommendations. I was looking over the Model Secular Policy Guidance, very helpful, but I mean, are there any bills that you have language set ready to go for, whether it's a bill that you all want to sponsor or you want to inject, let's say, some pro-atheist boilerplate language in, or is it more general than that?
Last year we had some very specific asks about specific bills. It was particularly an amendment in the Defense Authorization Bill to allow humanist chaplains to serve in the military chaplaincy. We are looking for a sponsor again for that this year and have not found one yet. But we're going to be talking about 4 different issues at our lobby day. Climate change, and generally our ask there is that the discussion about climate change be informed and focused on scientific facts, which we've seen even just this week, I think, different Bible quotes and references to higher beings coming into the justifications for why inaction on climate change is justified. We're also going to be talking about that same military issue with, I think it's about 1/4 of our military are non-religious or non-believers, and they don't have a single chaplain to speak with. That often raises a few eyebrows, isn't it? Why does someone who doesn't believe these service members have a lot of the same issues as anyone else about missing home or fearing getting hurt or dying, and they need someone to talk to as well. We're also going to be talking about vouchers. Right now there are 2 bills in the Senate and 2 bills in the House that want to send a combined $35 billion of federal taxpayer money into vouchers that would be available to religious schools. There's actually language specifically in the larger of the bills that says religious schools will not be discriminated against for receiving these funds. And our final issue that we're going to be discussing is tax exemptions for religious organizations. And that is just some specific asks we have about language in the tax code, 3 different provisions that allow churches to receive a tax exemption without filing the same application as other 501c3s. Churches are exempt from having to file the annual 990 tax return form, and there's actually a provision called the Church Audit Procedures Act, which says that churches cannot be investigated at all unless a high-level Treasury official does the investigation and already has proof that there's wrongdoing going on before they even start an investigation. So this is practical immunity from any oversight of churches and what's going on there. So those are our 4 issues that we're going to be talking about on Lobby Day.
David?
Yeah. I'll just step up real quickly and mention, American Atheists is a 501c3. We were started by Madeleine Murray O'Hare, and we are all about specifically atheist civil rights. And when we go to talk to these people, when we go to talk to our representatives on the Hill, we talk as atheists because atheist is a good word to use. It's the right word. And one of the things that I always ask, and in fact, frankly, the central thing that I ask right now from all of our representatives is to use the word atheist, to say the word atheist. Not to say that all atheists are bad, but to actually say that atheists are a part of this movement, of this country. When they talk about their constituency, talk about the Christians and the Muslims and the Jews and the atheists. Include us. Don't avoid us. That is my main point for being here today.
Further questions?
Yeah. Hi. I had a question about the Secular Student Alliance. You touched on some internet outreach. I was wondering if you had any specific plans for that, or is it still in the brainstorming phase?
Yeah, well, we're still getting all the details figured out, but yeah. So you can go to openlysecular.org and kind of see our splash page there. But yeah, we're planning on having lots of videos of people coming out and telling their stories about why they decided to open up. And we're also working on developing some other resources, toolkits. So, I mentioned the What is an Atheist brochure. We're interested in producing resources that maybe would specifically help students come out to parents, or parents come out to their children, or coming out to a spouse, sort of to help out people that are in a situation like Sarah Morehead was talking about earlier. So just generally raising awareness and getting stories out there, and letting people sign up and share their stories via videos they record themselves, and those toolkits. Those are going to be the big things that we will be moving forward with. We also have a related program which helps students that are not necessarily ready to be leaders of student groups, called the Secular Safe Zone. You can go to secularsafezone.org, and essentially what that allows people to do, it allows anybody, religious or non-religious, to go through a short training course and become a secular ally. And they get a little sign they can hang up in their office or classroom or whatever it is, to just let the people they interact with, their students or whoever it is, know that there's somebody who is safe to talk to about those issues. And we created that program with administrators and educators in mind. But we've had some interesting other folks sign up. we actually we had a Girl Scout troop leader sign up, and we had a funeral home director sign up because he wanted his customers to know that they could have a funeral without God in it if they wanted to, that he was a safe service provider for that kind of thing. So we actually are finding that universities are interested in reaching out to us because they know that seculars are one of the fastest, well actually the fastest growing religious group in the United States right now, a religious group as it were, and they know that those students are on their campuses and they really want to be able to serve them and help them, and we've actually run trainings now at University of Nevada, Las Vegas and University of Central Florida, and we're working with several other institutions to kind of roll that into their kind of cultural competency programming that they're doing at those organizations. So just like it's basically impossible to be at most universities in the United States right now and have there not be some sort of awareness of how to protect LGBT rights, that sort of same awareness seems to be just beginning to percolate for secular students as well.
I'll ask another one if I can. So one of the things one of the most impassioned pleas that we saw come from that side of the room today was regarding bullying and harassment. And obviously there is hate crimes legislation that includes religious belief. But when you're on the Hill tomorrow, is there any suggestion as to how that might be improved as to protect atheists? Because obviously it's not doing that work.
Sure.
We've done a lot of work on religious exemptions that we're seeing creep into, especially LGBT laws, laws to prevent anti-discrimination against the LGBT community, and trying to keep the religious exemptions to those laws as narrow as possible. We had actually some really great success when ENDA, the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, passed the Senate this past session. We were, I want to say, one of the leaders of working with LGBT groups in making sure that an amendment to expand the religious exemption to not just nonprofits but for-profits, basically swallowing the rule there, that was defeated. And it was still a narrow defeat, and it's a major concern when that bill does eventually come up in the House. It's a difficult road when you talk about religiously motivated discrimination about religion. So atheism, not a religion, but does still deserve protection, the same protections that are afforded by the Civil Rights Act about discriminating against someone for their religion. And it's not a specific ask that we are going to be making tomorrow, but we do want to make sure that no belief or no religion is included in those anti-discrimination provisions.
Kelly is a brilliant lobbyist, but she is too politically correct.
Can I quote you on that? Sorry.
No.
The first half.
Religious exemption clauses are asks for permission to allow children to harass other children for the purpose of making them second-class citizens because they're not religious. They're evil legislation. They're bigoted, malicious legislation aimed at specifically allowing religious children to harass non-religious children. That's what we're talking about. That's what the religious right is claiming as their religious right. Religious exemptions to bullying don't exist, should not exist, because that just allows you to continue to bully in a place where the bullying needs to stop. Most of all, the public schools are for everyone. And when somebody comes up to you and says, I want my child to be able to bully another child specifically by law. That needs to be laughed off the hill. That does not need any support by any representative of Congress ever at all. Thank you.
Dave,
Yeah.
is some of that a religious exemption for the purpose of allowing religious people to discriminate or bully gay children
Sure.
on religious reasons?
Yeah, sure.
Not
Sure.
just their
Well,
religion of the person,
okay, so,
but the-
so I'll expand that, but it's about allowing children to bully, period. It's about allowing children to bully because they say, Jesus wants me to. And they can bully anybody that's different. Gays, Jews, atheists, anybody. Because Jesus wants me to makes it legal. And that makes it repugnant.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Yes.
Steve.
I saw a hand back here. Yes, sir.
Yeah, this global conversation really. Can you just explain to me or give some exploration of the definition of differences between secularism and atheism? And you mentioned about secular. Do you have some, like in religion, they have a holy book. Do you have all those kind of book guidance to be taught, to be spread?
All right, so the gentleman's asking for a definition between that compares, contrasts atheism versus secularism, and also, well, what is the book that atheists follow? If you know, well, number one, that is what is an atheist. This is a pamphlet that you will be handed after this. But frankly, in a nutshell, atheist, without the belief in a God, a supernatural higher power. Secular, one who believes that the government, particularly here in the U.S., should not be influenced by religious ideals. This is not a Christian nation, this is not a Muslim nation, this is not a Jewish nation, it's a secular nation. There's no book, there's no doctrine, there's no tradition, there's no creed. Thank you, that is the word I was looking for. Thank you, Mr. Lowe. There is no creed that one follows to consider himself, herself, their self atheist. It's just if you are someone who does not feel that making an entreaty to the sky can stop your house from being aflame, you're probably an atheist. If you're somebody who doesn't believe that Thor is the reason for every Thursday, well, you're clearly an atheist toward Thor. There are a bunch of gods that none of us believe in, and some of us believe in absolutely no God. So that's atheism. As a moderator, take over. We have just a few more minutes remaining. Woohoo, for once I'm actually keeping something on time. What I would love to do is, are there any other questions? Quickly, okay. What I would love to do is I would love to point out a couple folks in the room, if I might. I want to point out the president of the Secular Coalition for America. This is Amanda Metzges. Hi, Amanda, thank you. One of the founders of the Secular Coalition for America, Herb Silverman, in the back, in the wonderful shirt. Thank you for being here, Herb Silverman. Directly in front of Herb is Lauren Anderson Youngblood, who is the Director of Communications for the Secular Coalition, and she has been doing the media today. Thank you so very much for that. I also want to acknowledge Robin Blumner, who is in the back. She is the Executive Director at the Richard Dawkins Foundation for Reason and Science, and it is a delight to have you here with us today. So thank you so much. These are folks I wanted to point out. And again, I'm so excited for the Mars family being here. Yours is a story that is so essential. This is why we do this. This is who we are fighting for. And someday you're going to get old enough to go to the ballot place, and you're going to vote for the woman or the man or the person who chooses to not call oneself that, who is going to represent you. And it's really important that you are able to say who you are and why you're an American and why you should participate in the system. So once again, thank you so much for coming. So the Secular Coalition for America Lobby Days start tomorrow. A bunch of our elected representatives will be saying, I am an ally to you. Others will probably be saying other things, and I will leave it to the Director of Communications for Secular Coalition to point out who said what. This is a wonderful event. Or is it possible to still register, get in there, or are we all closed? Can we get in if someone has not registered?
We're closed because we had to pre-schedule meetings.
Okay, so we had to, you missed it, but that's what we'll be doing, and further news will be coming out of the events of the duration of this week. And I would like to thank you one and all for being here, and have a fabulous day. Thank you again.